Richard Somerville, the next statement is yours.
The motion before us, global warming is not a crisis, means we ought to know what crisis means. The word does not mean catastrophe or alarmism. It means a crucial or decisive moment, a turning point, a state of affairs in which a decisive change for better or worse is imminent. We are talking about the future here. The entire world now really does have a critical choice to make. It is whether to continue on the present path of adding more and more carbon dioxide and other greenhouse gases to the atmosphere, or whether to find another path. We're speaking of the future, and science tells us that the path we choose will largely determine what kind of Earth our children and grandchildren will inherit. Our task tonight is to persuade you that global warming is indeed a crisis in exactly that precise sense, so you should vote against the motion. The science community today has impeccable, settled science, despite what you have just heard, that demonstrates the reality of global warming and its primary origin in human activities. We fully understand the fundamental physics behind the greenhouse effect. We also now have persuasive observational evidence of dramatic changes already taking place in the climate system, changes that are not in any sense small. Mankind's fingerprints have now clearly emerged above the noise of natural variability. That is the primary message of the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change report that Professor Lindzen referred to, the IPCC. We also have powerful tools to project many aspects of the future climate with considerable confidence. We take into account other important factors besides greenhouse gases, the sun, volcanoes, pollution particles. Some of our forecasts have already come true. A group of people dispute these consensus findings of mainstream scientists. Call them contrarians. Some are here in this very room. Contrarians are not unique to climate. They exist in many fields of science. There are a few retrovirus experts fully credentialed who don't think that HIV causes AIDS. The New Yorker this week, many of you will have seen, writes about them. When the revolution of continental drift was sweeping through geology and geophysics, some eminent Earth scientists couldn't be persuaded that plate tectonics where real continents can move. These contrarians were mistaken. They faded from the scene. Long experience shows that in science it tends to be the rare exception rather than the rule when a lone genius eventually prevails over conventional mainstream scientific thought. An occasional Galileo does come along, or an Einstein, not often. Most people who think they're a Galileo are just wrong. We're talking here about managing risk for the future. It's a big risk to the planet to bet it on the contrarians. Here's a brief look at some of what we know. The IPCC said, quote, warming of the climate system is unequivocal, unquote, based on many kinds of observations. Also, our knowledge of ancient climates tells us that the warmth of the last half century is unusual in at least the previous 1,300 years. The IPCC said most of the observed increase in globally average temperatures in recent decades is very likely due to the observed increase in human-caused greenhouse gas concentrations. These are summary conclusions of experts in a painstaking process lasting years with 30,000 reviewer comments, each logged, numbered, responded to by teams of experts who represent the mainstream science and who take into account views from the fringes as well. There's never been as thorough and vetted a process for summarizing science precisely for the point of making input to policymakers. Nothing said here tonight in a few minutes that we have can possibly undermine this powerful statement from the scientific community. We also project a further warming of 0.5 degree Fahrenheit for the next 25 years. Beyond that, it does depend largely on how much more CO2 and other greenhouse gases humanity dumps into the atmosphere. Global warming since the 19th century is already more than 1 degree Fahrenheit. It's continuing. Of the 12 warmest years in the instrumental record, 11 of them have occurred in the most recent 12 years globally. 2006 was the 6th warmest year in this record globally, and the warmest year of all in the US. Arctic temperatures in the last 100 years increased twice as much as the global average. Since 1950, the number of heat waves globally has increased. The heat wave in Europe in 2003 that killed more than 30,000 people was unprecedented in modern times. Intense tropical cyclone activity, the IPCC concludes, has increased in the North Atlantic region since about 1970. The global ocean, down to a depth of at least 6,000 feet, has been warming since the early 1960s. This warming is contributing to sea level rise. It's by no means all vestiges of the last ice age. Sea level rose some 7 inches over the 20th century. The rate of rise has apparently increased recently. Water vapor in the atmosphere, as predicted, is increasing as the world warms. This additional water feeds back. It's a greenhouse gas. It amplifies the warming. It's as though you had your house wired funny so that when it got warm, the thermostat turned on the furnace and made it warmer still. Snow cover and mountain glaciers are decreasing markedly. It's a long list. The list goes on. None of these observational facts is a surprise to the climate science community. They are what we had predicted. We scientists have been expecting measurements like these, and now we see them. The question for the future is simply, how much worse do we intend, how much more severe will we let these trends become? The science warns us that continuing to fuel the world using present technology will bring dangerous and possibly surprising climate changes by the end of this century, if not sooner. Business as usual implies more heat waves, higher sea levels, disrupted rainfall patterns, vanishing glaciers, and much more. Limiting carbon dioxide amounts to any reasonable level will take large cuts in emissions. It takes time. We have a giant infrastructure based on fossil fuels. To have a meaningful effect by mid-century, we need to start soon. The question is really whether humanity has the collective determination to act in any meaningful way. The economic case can be made convincingly once people understand the cost of doing nothing or too little. It's like elective surgery. It's not free to decline it. Technology can accomplish great things once society is committed to such a goal. We know now that humanity has already increased atmospheric carbon dioxide by 35% above natural levels. And humanity, as a group, by default or on purpose, will now decide what level it wants to tolerate. Then, after humanity has made this decision, how much CO2 do you want in your children and grandchildren's atmosphere?
One.
After that, nature will have its say. And the climate system will change in response to the level of greenhouse gases in the atmosphere. Nature is superbly indifferent to politics and spin, but it will have the last word in this debate. I have a few seconds, and I'll say a few words about the IPCC. I've been a coordinating lead author in it for 3 years. I was in Paris last month when this summary was negotiated and released. It's an extraordinarily impressive international collaboration, 30,000 review comments, 150 authors, 75% of whom, by the way, were new to the process. We're not a clique defending what we said 6 years ago. I urge you to familiarize yourself with the science, because the science here has spoken very plainly. Thank you.